Let's freaking go. You got to see the new backdrop right there. And I am so excited to be with you on a glorious hump day. And today we're going to talk about how I feel Missouri could be overvalued based on what they have done up to this point in the season. And if you are a super diehard college football fan, I think you're actually going to love this on an even deeper scale. So we did a lot of stuff on our SEC channel, Power Hour SEC, on SEC scheduling, okay? How it is never quite equal based on just whichever school you go to, and how you actually schedule your opening month of games can really fluctuate how teams and just the media and fans in general view your team. So for me, Missouri up to this point, yes, they are 5-0. Yes, their offense looks absolutely amazing. Yes, Brady Cook looks to be a very underrated quarterback in all of college football. And they do have a very affable team, right? Elijah Drinkowitz is a guy that I think a lot of people just like, right? But the thing that people are failing to mention when it comes to Missouri is this very simple stat: strength of schedule, okay? So more so than any other sport that we have in major American sports, college football strength of schedules fluctuate heavily from team to team. So as you can see right here, this is via Saturday Down South. This is the ESPN FPI schedule. Now, I am not saying the ESPN FPI model is just the Bible, basically. It's not the be-all, end-all. I will say, though, a lot of strength of schedule metrics view Missouri the same way. So you see South Carolina. A lot of people view South Carolina, dang, they've already lost 3 games, but they played Tennessee on the road, they played Georgia on the road, and they played the number 2 draft pick to start the season at a neutral site. So South Carolina has played very difficult teams. You see Ole Miss number 3, you see LSU number 5, and you've got to scroll all the way down to Missouri at number 95 in all of college football. 95, and as many of you know, I've always said Kentucky's the most overrated college football program in America, and Mark Stoops is the most overrated coach in America. 124 is Kentucky's strength of schedule, and they did play historically the easiest schedule I've ever seen in the SEC. So LSU is sitting all the way up here as the number 5 strength of schedule, and Missouri is sitting here at the number 95 strength of schedule. So let me know if you're watching this live or if you're watching this down the road. How do you feel about that? Does this change your opinion? And does this make you say, well, LSU, the games that they lost to Ole Miss, who looks like a very serious player, and they lost to Florida State. Both of those games were honestly road games. Well, maybe LSU isn't as bad as we put them out to be. Now, look, LSU, of course, defensively, they're really bad, but offensively, they are maybe the best offense in all of college football. Maybe, just maybe, Missouri isn't as good as we like to think that they are. Now, whoever you are, last year, I did actually bet Missouri to go over their win total because I really did like their coaching staff. I also like the number at 5.5. But one thing I really like about Missouri is I actually went on ahead and took their over win total again this year, and that was at 6.5. Last year was at 5.5. This year was at 6.5. So let's take a look at Missouri's start to their season, and as you'll see right here, they're 5-0, okay? They beat the South Dakota Coyotes. Oh, my goodness gracious. Great balls of fire, South Dakota Coyotes. They beat them 35-10 in an opening Thursday night game, which means they had ample rest to play the Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders, and they beat them 23-19. And then the very next week, they beat a very good Kansas State team, but that game was at home. They won that one 30-27. And then the next week, they had to go to St. Louis, and they played Memphis, and they won that game 34-27. Then they played Vanderbilt last week. I'm sure you guys saw the preview film study. We do it every Wednesday. They won this game 38-21. So let me ask you this. If you were to look at this, how many of these performances would you say are unbelievably impressive? That you look at this Missouri team and you're like, wow, this team is very good. And my answer would be none of them. Okay, you played the South Dakota Coyotes and you beat them by 25. Whoop-de-doo. And the other highest margin of victory was Vanderbilt 38-21. And I was very impressed that they were able to cover that spread. I thought that was kind of a look-ahead spot for them. So going on the road and beating Vanderbilt, but then again, they're Vanderbilt. The other three games all being one-possession games. Kansas State game was very weird. It took a 61-yard field goal to win that one. I'm sorry. I think this Missouri team is very overvalued. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean that they can't win this game. That doesn't mean that I didn't do a video all the way back in February telling you to be very worried about the Missouri game. And there was a bunch of research. It wasn't just like the normal thing you hear analysts say, well, they could lose this game and Missouri is a sleeper. Now, I gave you a lot of data as to why this Missouri game could be a very difficult game for LSU because it is the back end of a back-to-back road game. It is an 11 a.m. kick. I did predict that the Ole Miss game would be a night game and the Missouri game would be an 11 a.m. game. That's the worst scenario you can ask for in a back-to-back road game situation. So a lot of these things ended up coming true, and I did predict that Missouri was going to be very good this year, and they honestly have been. I don't think anyone had Missouri 5-0 after 5 weeks. But at the same time, we can acknowledge that some of these games have been close, right? I don't consider it a victory that you barely beat Middle Tennessee State 23-19. And what we tend to do as college football fans, we do it all the time. It's one of my main things that I want to do in my career as a college football analyst, okay? It's to share how inequitable schedules actually are, right? In college football, your schedule matters more than anything else. So it's very, very, very important to look at who the teams have played. Okay. And you really, and I really do mean this, you can't ever really judge a college football team until honestly November. Like you don't have enough sample size because of how front-loaded, easy some schedules are in the SEC compared to others, right? How can we compare Kentucky and actually say Kentucky is a better team than South Carolina when South Carolina has a number 2 schedule and Kentucky has a number 124 schedule? Okay. It's not equitable. We got to wait. You got to wait. That's why you really can't do any college football rankings until October, if you ask me, or excuse me, until November. You really don't know anything. You really don't know anything. Okay. We said to King Ulysses, he's actually going to the game. Let me know if you're going to the game. I know we have quite a few PHLers actually going to this one. I'm kind of shocked that there were so many PHLers that said, you know, the one place I really want to go, the one game I want to make, Missouri. So as many of you know, the last time we went here, we lost. Offensively, we put up a lot of points, but we were 0 for 10 on third down. And we did have 4 goal line opportunities to win this game, and we didn't do it. So there are some skeletons in this closet from 2020. Now, how many players from the 2020 team are still on this year's team? The answer is, well, not many, if any at all. So, yeah, it's crazy. Let's see who would still be on that team and on the 2023 team. I probably should have looked this up beforehand. So, if you are listening to this via podcast, thank you guys so much. Please go hit the iTunes subscribe button, leave the 5-star review, all that good stuff, Spotify. But obviously the big thing is always going to be YouTube. I'm trying to grow the other platforms. I just think I might just focus everything on doing the YouTube stuff. I might just do that. Now, the next thing I want to do, all right, And I want this to be perfectly clear. All right. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I have been thinking about Greg Brooks all day. Okay. Obviously, the news finally came out, and it's very sad. It's very, very, very sad. Now, I'm not going to break down the condition, the brain condition, but there is a link that you can go support with the Tiger Fund and Greg Brooks, and you can obviously support Greg and his journey via what TAF has done. Now, personally, that stinks, and we've seen, Arkansas, tweet out the link and all that stuff. We've seen Jaden Daniels do it. We've seen all these different players, teams, some other LSU sports. It stinks, and it shows you how life can change in an instant. This guy was riding high, team captain. I remember, this offseason, him saying that he was going to win the Jim Thorpe Award. I got to be real. It hurts. It really, really, really hurts. And, I don't, talk a whole lot about like off field stuff. I don't really keep it, to football. So understand that the, obstacles he is going to have to overcome is far more serious than basically anything football related. But I say this objectively, that this could not come at a worse time for LSU. They are missing some leadership. I feel like right now he would legitimately be LSU's best DB by a pretty wide margin. I think if he was able to play safety, we'd be able to kick Andre Sam to play some nickel. But at this point, like Greg isn't like some all-time great safety talent, but he was really valuable in a unit that is probably a little hurt. Maybe that is affecting LSU's play a little bit more than we would like to think. The fact that the guy who was voted team captain isn't there, and it is pretty sad, right? It is going to be a long road of recovery. So obviously, on a more serious note, I'm wishing the best for Greg. I know a lot of you are as well. But from a football standpoint, we talk a lot about injury luck. You got to have it. I mean, you just do, especially when it's one of your key guys at the thinnest position room. And I will say that the two position groups in college football, of course, outside of quarterback, where you don't want to be thin in terms of numbers, is the offensive line and the secondary. Okay? Because you just need to have more of those guys. There's 5 offensive linemen on the field at every time, and there's 5 defensive backs more often than not on the field at every time. And right now, I don't know if LSU has 2, maybe 3 guys that would be SEC rotational defensive backs at other schools. We're struggling. We are struggling. So there you go. What's up, Justin? How you doing? He says, how do I super chat without giving too much info? LOL. There's plenty of ways you could support PHL. If you don't want to super chat, you can join the Patreon. If you join the Patreon, you get a Joe Burrow card in the mail. And yesterday, we actually gave out this big old Jay Hill card. We gave out some pretty cool cards right here. Autograph patch. That went to Blanche. And then tonight, if we get to a hundo in super chats, we're going to give out a Justin Jefferson mosaic rookie card right here. So there you go. So yeah. And we start things off here with Kareem. Yeah, at this point, obviously he probably won't play the rest of the season. Now, if he does, that would be one of the more miraculous things we have ever seen. But especially since this is a brain situation, the likelihood of him playing again at LSU is very little, which obviously isn't close to being in terms of importance as his personal health. And obviously the likelihood of him being drafted is very small. Now, what I would say, though, is more than likely, and this happens for some players that, have to retire or can't play again, is they get involved with coaching. Like LSU will give him an analyst role, and he can work his way up the ladder from there. I don't really know how much he could help the team right now, knowing that the surgery just happened. But, the good thing from the doctors is they say that it did not spread. So luckily, LSU is in a good spot there, and Greg Brooks is in a good spot there. So there you go. Now, I want to get into the secondary a little bit because we spend so much time on them. I truly do believe, and I know it's excuse making, but I do believe the slipping really hurt LSU, right? Not being able to stay on your feet is crucial, right? I've said this a gazillion times. The Kirby Smart speech that got leaked was so good because it was a bunch of cursing, and in the middle of all that cursing, he said, "Stay off the ground." I think that is the most underrated piece of football advice that is given to football players. You don't want to die for a catch unless you absolutely have to. You don't want to jump, like you don't want to hurdle unless you absolutely have to. Maintain your leverage, keep your feet, and keep your balance, and tackle people. And when it's time to bring them to the ground, bring them to the ground. If their back is turned to you and they catch a pass, wrap them up. You don't have to suplex them, because if you do, they can break that. Okay? So we've got to play smarter. We just do. Okay? Let's go to Todd here. LSU should easily cover against Missouri. Yeah, I don't know if you truly do believe Missouri's going to cover at 6.5, then you might as well just take the money line, right? But then again, Missouri does have a good kicker. I could see them kicking some 70-yard bomb to win. But at this point, I think LSU in a bounce back spot, coming off a loss, knowing your season is still on the line here. Lucky enough, this loss was to Ole Miss, who has already lost an SEC game. Everything is still in front of you. It just is. So yeah, I mean, I think for me personally, I kind of like LSU in a bounce back spot here. I think the defense should play better. Okay. Now, how much better? I don't know. But we've got to play smarter too. And that's also going to be very key. Now, I want to chat a little bit about Jaden and what he was able to do this past week, and if there is a way forward for him to, of course, win this Heisman Trophy. Obviously, LSU is going to have to win out, more than likely. They're going to need to win out, and he's still going to need to play at the level he's playing. Now, can LSU win out? I think so. I don't see a team on their schedule the rest of the way that is so undeniably good that they can't win. Okay? The two toughest games left on the schedule is Alabama and Texas A&M. Now, if you are Brian Kelly, one big sigh of relief you can have after this Missouri game is knowing that you only have one more road game left. And for that road game, you're going to get 2 weeks to prepare. Okay? So, for me, I'm feeling pretty good about LSU's chances versus Missouri. The more I've looked into it, the better I have felt about it. Let's go to Deep Pain here. How am I feeling about my BTJ preseason prediction? Yeah, so before the season, I spent a week looking at all his snaps and all the plays that he made in his first 2 seasons at LSU. And my main assertion was he had been very unlucky, right? Now, his numbers should have been better than in his first couple of seasons, but he had just had so much bad luck go against him. And the video was just, a byproduct of showing all this bad luck. Him being missed when he was open, him being, barely brought down, a stupid holding penalty, taking back a 70-yard touchdown he had versus Florida. He just had all this bad luck. And now that the flags are starting to, kind of go his way, you saw a very good piece of luck this past weekend versus Ole Miss, where the announcers were saying it was going to be an overturn. Ole Miss fans obviously felt it should have been an overturn, but they did not overturn it. Okay. Last year, there was a catch versus Florida that I thought he made cleanly, and they overturned it. Now, I was very shocked that they did. So he's had a lot of good luck this year. And I thought that was going to start going his way. And also, he's just a really good football player. He's always been a supreme talent. And it is very interesting. He was always compared to Terrace Marshall, and Terrace Marshall's best game of his career came against Missouri on the road in 2020. So yeah. Let's go to Justin. Thank you for the super chat. He wants to talk some Kerry Cooks. He says Justin lives in Oklahoma. Tons of OU fans tell me that he teaches eyes on the receiver and break hands through the basket. True. So I don't know any of his personal tactics, but what I can tell you, Justin, is for one thing, when Kerry Cooks was at Oklahoma, there was a feeling that the Sooner secondary underperformed. There's a good piece in The Athletic about that. I did have one guy who's very tied in with Oklahoma tell me that as well. When Jamar Cain was hired by LSU, this same person told me, hey, this guy's a superstar. And Jamar Cain was really good for us. But when Kerry Cooks was hired, he said, hey, I think he's good, but I don't think he's a difference maker per se. So, yeah, up to this point, obviously, the safeties have not played well. But the thing that's been very interesting, Justin, as far as the safety position is concerned, is how many of them have been colossal bust, just straight out of high school. Okay, Derek Davis Jr. was a top 100 guy. Jordan Tolles was a top 100 guy. One plays a brand new position, and the other doesn't even play Power 5 football anymore. So it's weird how many safeties haven't worked out. And it's also kind of weird, Justin, that this, and honestly, just look at the safeties who have played at LSU. And this is what Kerry Cooks would probably say. He says, look, the guys I've had have all been transfers. None of these guys are high school recruits. Okay. So he would say, hey, all these kids that I have that are young, they just can't play. They can't play Division I Power 5 football, whether it be injury or whatever the case may be. It is amazing, right? Even some of the 3-star guys, none of those guys have panned out up to this point. Guys that I like to like, guys that I was rooting for. So an argument could be made, hey, I haven't had a whole lot to work with. Okay. But but our safety play needs to be better. It just does. There were some alignments that I thought were a little strange, and there were there was just an overall colossal lack of energy, if you will. Lots of missed tackles, lots of trailing and not making plays. It's amazing, honestly. Okay. So, yeah, if you're an LSU fan, the question you could probably ask yourself is maybe, just maybe, the football gods are punishing LSU. You had more great defensive backs than practically everyone. Most of the guys you did bring in were like really good football players. And now none of the guys you bring in are any good. None of the guys coming in straight out of high school are any good at defensive back. And that's just what it's been up to this point. Hopefully that changes. I know that sounds like very blunt, but at this point, most of our defensive back production has been transfers and Jay Ward. Honestly, he's obviously not here anymore. So yeah, it hurts. It really, 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 really hurts. But yeah, I mean, you can go down the list of all the defensive backs that have been brought in to LSU. Demarius McGee, he was a top 154 star. He's at Kansas. Sage Ryan is a constant struggle. Once again, Jordan Tolles, not even playing Power 5 football anymore. Okay? And this list goes on and on and on and on. And when you look at it, and honestly, if you want to go a little bit deeper into this, Justin, when you look at like the Jamal Adams region, okay? So once again, I've had Jamal Adams jersey. I knew he was making a comeback. And then, he had the concussion or whatever happened. He got hit in the head. So I'm happy Maul is back, 13-month recovery. That sucks. But if you look at like that Jamal Adams era, there were some DBs that just did not work out at LSU, right? So there was a guy by the name of Ed Paris who was just constantly injured. Todd Harris, constantly injured, didn't work out. Eric Monroe, who remembers Eric Monroe? He was a top 100 DB. Didn't work out. So LSU has had quite a few DBs during that period that just didn't work out at LSU for whatever reason. But the fact that most of them did negated that some of the other guys just did not work out. Now you're looking at an LSU secondary. You don't really know anything about this current class, but you're in a spot now like, God, has anybody out of high school that LSU recruited worked out for us in the past 2 years? And the answer is Jay Ward, and that's it. That's it. Which is strange. It's very, very, very strange. So what is it? Is it Corey Raymond not being here anymore? I don't think that's it. I really don't. I think it's just a string of really bad luck. Maybe we need to look into how we develop these guys. We also need to probably look, are all the other secondaries stinking? The answer to that is no. Georgia's secondary, of course, is going to be good. It's not as elite. But then again, if you lose Lewis Seen and all those guys, you're going to have some regression. Alabama's secondary this year is really good. They're a really, really good secondary. They lost Brian Branch. They lost the Battle Kid. They lost, I forgot his name, number 2. He was in the Senior Bowl. They lost a lot of good football players. Secondary still fine. So, yeah, I don't know exactly what it is. Obviously, I'm going to take a deeper look into it. I'm lucky to know quite a few defensive backs that have played at LSU. One I would consider a pretty good friend in Ron Brooks. I don't know. It's strange. Is it Cooks? Chet says blame the rankings. Well, if that's the case, then the 4 and 5 stars that have gone to the other schools, they've not busted. They've not. I mean, they look fine to me. Okay. Now, I've had quite a few of you send me this segment from Moscona. I say quite a few. It's 2 of you about the NIL stuff. Okay. Can NIL always be better? Yes, obviously it can. Actually, I did watch a segment. I did. And he made some good points. He made some good points about name, image, and likeness, right? And I understand that there's quite a few of you that say, well, we need to rebuild through high school recruiting. And true, it would be nice to have JaQuincy Kool-Aid McKinstry type of talent at corner. It would be very nice. But ultimately, every year you're going to need to crush the transfer portal. You're just going to need to do that. Okay? And LSU every year is going to have their options in the transfer portal for who they want, what they want to do. You've got to be ready to get those guys. You just do. And I made the point that he made about the Florida State game was decided by transfers. It was all decided by transfers. Their team is full of transfers. So I do think high school development is key. I do think you have to get those guys. I really do. But I truthfully do believe at the same time that just high school recruiting isn't going to fix this. It's just not. It's just not. Now, you look at some of the other 4 and 5 star misses we've had a defensive back. Okay, so let's take someone like Desmond Ricks. I see someone brought up Justin brought up Desmond Ricks. Yeah, you tell me. You tell me what happened there at the end. It looked like it was LSU all the way, and he would be playing a lot right now. Okay. You tell me. So is it just that we're getting outbid? I don't know. I don't know. What I will tell you though is, okay, let's take someone like Javian Toviano. All right. Javian Toviano had a great spring. By all accounts, had a great spring. Flashed during the spring game, Javian Toviano. How bad is it that a top 100 true freshman DB who says all the right things, is plenty athletic enough, why haven't we given him a chance? I have a few theories, and I've shared those on Patreon. At this point, play him. Hell, play him. If he's there, play him. If you're a top 100 DB, if you're a top 100 anything, unless you play QB, okay, you should almost always know that wherever you're going to go, there should be not a single thought of you redshirting. If you're a top 100, you're the bona fide dude, okay? You better be ready to go. Okay. So I'll also say this is when I look at LSU's roster, and I had this position before the season, this roster was a very good first string roster. It was a very good first-string roster. I can even say it's a good 1.5 string roster, okay, where you have like a decent backup at almost every position. But LSU does not have a 2 deep. This is not a 2 deep, okay? One thing that kind of concerned me, and it was kind of like just a minor thing. Most teams release like a depth chart like every Monday, like they'll give a depth chart to the media. We haven't really done that. And I think, Brian Kelly's as transparent as you'll find in the coaching industry. I think even then they didn't know who their best players were, who their best starters were. So, you look at LSU's roster up to this point. Where are we deep? Of course, running back is somewhere you would consider that. Quarterback, you have a good starter and backup situation. But, tight end, you're not really deep. Wide receiver, you're not really deep. Offensive line, you're not really deep. Defensive line, kind of sort of deep. I would consider that the deepest unit of the three. But linebacker, you're really thin. Defensive back, you're very thin. Okay, it's just the truth. This is not a deep roster, and there is room for playing time. There's room for playing time. We just got to have some guys step up. Okay, we just do. From Thumbtack U. I hear you, Max. And this is something else I've received as well. Why is it that Zy Alexander, who is a transfer from Southeastern, is playing, but we can't play some of the 4 and 5 stars? Well, I don't know. But Zy Alexander can play. He can play. Now, one thing I do want to bring up, okay, more often than not, there is a reason why somebody isn't playing, okay? The only guy that I feel at this point that it's a lunacy to not play is Deshaun Womack at this point. The fact that he got 0 snaps. But, like before this last week, like Terrence Welsh, why wasn't he playing? And I was to the point where I was like, okay, let's play him. But there was a reason, right? You could see just in the special teams reps that he's not really a physical player. And that was part of the reason why I pointed out some of his special team reps versus Florida State. I pointed one out, I think. Okay, here's one. There was a play where he was a contained guy on kickoff unit versus Florida, okay? And I believe this was Etienne's first kickoff return of the season. And Welsh was the guy who was responsible in tackling him. And he wasn't really close. Wasn't physical, and we lost the edge, and it was a good kickoff return. I think it was that. I'd have to go back and look. So if you're not physical on special teams, what makes you think that's going to translate on defense? Okay. And he started the game well. He started the game like, wow, what were we thinking? And then as the game moved on, he missed some massive tackles. Massive. So oftentimes there is some kind of reason. Okay. And some of that might be the injuries he's had. You could tell, though, his ball skills are amazing. The actual art of playing corner and defending passes, he's pretty good. He's pretty freaking good. Okay? But at this point, on this roster, I truly do mean the only guy I want to see Toviano at this point. I just do. But the only guy for sure is Womack. The only guy. Okay. There's a few others like Shelton. I still want to see get some run. But that's not here nor there. Now, we did release a Missouri film study earlier today. So when we're done here in just a second, you guys can scallywag and go watch it if you haven't watched it yet. One thing I'll bring up about Missouri is, anytime you're playing like a non-marquee like SEC team that you don't really play all that often, people just aren't as excited. You don't go to LSU, you don't become an LSU fan to go play Missouri. Okay. And what's interesting is there is a lot to like about this team. Okay. I've always kind of been pro Missouri, right? Out of all the SEC teams, since they have joined the SEC, there's not really been a team that's punched above their weight as much as them, right? They've had 3 head coaches since they've been in the SEC. Gary Pinkel took freaking Missouri to SEC championship games twice. And then they hired Barry Odom, who wasn't ever really bad. He wasn't great. And Elijah Drinkwitz hadn't been bad, but he's not been great either. Okay. But they've always just been good, right? They don't necessarily have a sport that they're really known for, but they've got a major athletics program, right? And now they have reached a different level when it comes to talent, right? They've had a few 5 stars commit because the St. Louis region and all that stuff, but they got Luther Burden on this team. They had the number 1 receiver, Luther Burden, commit, and he's turned out to be good. They've also got the consensus number 1 defensive lineman committed in Williams Nwani for this next recruiting class. So they've recruited better. And they have the chance to get a few more good players. And they've got a bunch of positive momentum. They really, really, really do. So they're going to come into this game as an undefeated team, and they're going to look to, win this game. And like we said yesterday, if they win, they're rushing the field. So be ready for it. Be ready for it. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. We have got about 15 minutes left. So once again, if you super chat, we're going to go straight to your question. I do want to chat about the rest of the SEC. So I have done really well picking games this year. Okay. My plays have been, for the most part, pretty good this season. So I'm going to need your help because last week I hated everything. The only thing I liked was Colorado plus 21.5, and I took it. But still. Now, is there any SEC game that stands out to you? You take a look, LSU all the way down to 5-point favorites in this game. The line was at 7. It had been at 6.5 for a while, and now it's at 5. Okay. SP Plus has Missouri as a 1-point favorite, according to their numbers. Okay. Parker at Stats War has LSU as a 2-point favorite. Texas A&M plus 8.5 in the offseason. You can go look at my tweets. I said jump on that. Now at this point, unranked Texas A&M is only a 2-point underdog versus Alabama. Ole Miss 11.5 at home versus Arkansas. I really like the Piggies to cover there. I really do. Georgia 14.5 at home versus Kentucky. I really like Georgia in the bounce back spot. Kentucky has scored a combined, I think, 3 points in the last 4 seasons versus Kentucky or something like that. No. They've scored 20 combined points versus Kentucky in the last 4 seasons. Georgia, 14.5-point favorites. Love Georgia there. Don't like the hook there, but of course, love Georgia in that spot. Mark Stoops does not win these types of games. Florida, 18-point favorites at home versus Vanderbilt. Interesting. Let's go to Carvis in his super chat. We have numbers. You have the talent to try people in different positions. Try Welsh at free safety. Oh, I don't know about that. So Carvis, you said a minute ago, he's not really physical. So at free safety, I don't want a shaky tackler there. But I would like to see Andre Sam play the nickel. I do think that would be very key. So I like your line of thought. And one thing, Carvis, I would do as a defensive coordinator, all right, is if your defense is struggling, scrap everything and just get exotic. Okay? Play freaking Jeremiah Hughes. What's up, Nikki? Good to see you. UAPB. Golden Lions, let's go. One of my teammates was a really good running back there. Justin Billings. What year was he? I played with his older brother. So, and I played with him, I think, a year or so. Play Jeremiah Hughes. I actually wrote that on Patreon. That's right, Hughes, man. Played at Bishop Gorman. Hell, he played Division I DBs, and he practiced against the best true freshman receiver in the country, Zachariah Branch. Put him out there. I know for sure he's going to play hard. I've met Jeremiah once when we did a Zippies meetup. And give him a shot. Hell. Actually, just to send a message, put a secondary of all true freshman guys out there. Put them all out there. Put Yates at one safety, Toviano at the other, Stamps at one corner, Hughes at the other. Do something! They might get burned, but I know they're going to play hard. So they don't know any better. Play them. Give them a shot. Give them a shot. Let's go to LD88. So LD, I'll say this. I think their offense is very potent. I think they are really, really good offensively. I don't like their defense. I really don't. I think their front, they do have the best rush defense in the SEC, but some of that is based on who they've played up to this point. Okay. So they played Kansas State. Kansas State lost an elite running back in Deuce Vaughn from the year before. And they're at home. So they haven't really played like an elite rushing attack just yet, right? So I do think we'll be able to run the football. They've struggled with zone read. LD, I think you're a patron, and we did a Patreon breakdown on that as well. Their secondary is really good, though. Their secondary is really good. But then again, you know, they've not really played like an elite set of receivers like LSU's just yet. And while their offense is a lot of fun to watch, their running back room, they got a really good 1-2 punch there. They've got really good receivers. I know when I watched it, I was like, am I truly watching a special offense? Or are we going to see some regression when they play better teams? I'm tending to think the latter compared to the former. But yeah, I mean, their rush defense is really good. It's really, really, really good. But if you're just now joining us, the one stat Missouri has had the second easiest strength of schedule in the SEC. And it's different than having the second easiest strength of schedule in the NFL, right? Because everybody in the NFL is good. There is no easy game in the NFL, okay? Unless you're playing the Bears. Outside of that, there is no easy game in the NFL. College football is different. Everybody's schedules are imbalanced, even more so at the beginning of the season. So I really don't know anything about this Missouri team. College football is so much about who you play. Let's go to Ryan. Wait, hold on. Someone's got a little scouting report. AP says the right guard is a weak link. Let's go to Ryan. I know the offense played absolutely amazing last week, but was there anything that stood out to you that we could do better? Now, what I'm going to do, Ryan, here is take out the final drive of the game. Okay? Or the second to last drive of the game. Obviously, Jaden's fourth quarter was his roughest. It was still really good. Okay. Honestly, Ryan, a few things. Rollouts were a struggle. We had some mixed results. We had a sack on a rollout when our offensive linemen on both sides of the line of scrimmage ran what looked to be different plays and it led to a sack. Obviously, Jaden not taking hits the way that he's taking them. At this point, he's so valuable to our team's success. You can be the biggest Gary Nussbauer fan in the world and acknowledge that he's if he played, he likely wouldn't be at Jaden's level just yet, right? I think he can get to that level, obviously, but not taking those hits would obviously be a good step in the right direction. And when you need to take them, but protect yourself a little bit better. Obviously, the rollouts need to be better. A few rough pass protection snaps, but for the most part, they're playing good football. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm pro playing Toviano at this point, but this was my major thing, and we did a film study on this during the off season. The defensive scheme he played in was so bad in the back end that my jaw was to the floor. I mean, they just had so many when they blew most of the teams out that they played because they weren't really good teams, and they were very good. It's just when it came to teams that had like a decent aerial attack, they would get beat on the back end. And there's a transition when you actually have to play in an actual secondary. Ole Miss gets fined $75,000 after its fans threw beer bottles on the field. I saw me on Fruity Beers to Bud Light. Man, out of the lines, so lime beers are my favorite. Out of Bud Light Lime, I love Bud Light Lime. But I'm also Michelob Lime. I love Michelob Lime. Taylor Martorana. Everybody, welcome Taylor to the channel. He just hops in and drops a $5 super chat, so we'll keep it going. Okay, in the next 5 minutes, I'll take as many as we possibly can. If you super chat, we'll keep going. Who do you think is responsible for who is playing on defense, House or BK? Same question for RB rotation, Frank or BK. Okay, running back rotation is Frank, right? He's going to have, they don't pay him $900K and be the assistant head coach without having heavy say on who's going to be playing out there at running back. So obviously Dim Brock and BK have more authority in that situation on who plays. But Frank does get to make that call to a certain extent. So same thing for defense, right? Brian Kelly can obviously override anything that Matt House says. But the main decision, Taylor, that a head coach for any team is going to make is who they are playing at quarterback. Okay? And once again, the head coach signs off on every single player that actually plays. He just does, right? Whether he's making the decision or he's letting someone else make the decision. So I do think Brian Kelly is going to be more involved on who actually plays defensively. Okay? It's crazy. Crazy. But also, Taylor, and I go back to this as well, the big thing is you don't have Greg Brooks. From a football standpoint, as Pegasus just pointed out, it matters. Carter, if we lose to Mizzou, then what? What is your record for wins and losses then? Obviously, if LSU were to lose to Missouri, the season really is over at that point. There's really no way forward for you, okay? Which really stinks because kind of like last year when LSU lost to Tennessee, because there was so much chaos happening in the SEC and Alabama also lost to Tennessee, you were given a lifeline, right, to still win the SEC West with multiple losses. And LSU had 3 losses total, 2 in the SEC, and they're still able to win the West. Okay? So guess what? You're kind of in a similar spot. You lost to Ole Miss. But at this point, Real Edo, I would venture off to say that LSU has the best odds of winning the SEC at this point. Okay? Winning the SEC West at this point. Of course, a lot of this will change if Texas A&M is able to beat Alabama. In that scenario, I think you do want Texas A&M to beat Alabama. You do. because, well, actually, I'm not sure. Let me think a little bit more on that. I don't know. Do you want? Either way, you just got to take care of business. Chatted with Kevin a little bit earlier, I believe. I think this is the same Kevin. A lot of talk has been the secondary card, but if you go back and look at the FSU took over. The first was not through the air, was on the ground, running counter right at us. Yeah, once again, the counter didn't just kill us in that game, but I mean they had some success, as that game moved on. So, but I know you're in the second half of the game. Yeah, you're right. The major point though you're making is our front seven needs to play better, and you're right. I saw Dr. Morgan in here earlier mentioning that same thing. We've got to play better. We just do. We just do. All right, y'all. Type Y if you're going to be at the Thursday night live stream. Let me know. Okay. And if you want more of me, guess what? I have a full film study just for you. Okay. You ain't got to worry. You can still get me. Baby. Okay. Oh, it would, Pierce. It would. They would be the first team since, last year, 2022 Georgia did it. So maybe it's not a trend anymore if that's the case. But I did actually have LSU versus Texas A&M to win the West at the end of the season. So there you go. We'll see you tomorrow night. It is Power Hour LSU. Boom. And top super chatters tonight: Kareem, Justin, Carvis, and Taylor. Let's go.